Seems to be working. The red light's on anyway. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And good morning to anybody who happens to look at this on YouTube later. We're in the Adult Bible Studies book. That's on May 1st, a Sabbath Jubilee. And it's from Leviticus. And the purpose statement is to perceive the world as God's economy and to ponder our role as cohabitants. And I have no idea what that means. I looked up economy, every definition I could find. And economy is the process by which production and consumption are attempted to be matched based on people's choices of what they want. I still don't understand. But anyway, it's kind of more on the theme of a little bit related to the theme we talked about last week about celebrating God's creation. Well, this is about respecting God's creation and our role in doing that. And the teacher book and student book got two very different, vastly different takes on it. So I guess you could pick your lesson. But I'm going to stick with the student book because that makes more, well, it's easy to think about. The teacher book talks about Cain and Abel more than it talks about letting creation have a Sabbath as well. And what this part of Leviticus is about is Leviticus is mostly, as you probably know anyway, it's kind of the rule book. Leviticus refers, I think, to the Levite priests because it has a lot in there about how worship and sacrifice and atonement is to be done. But a very large part of Leviticus is rules about how society is to be run for the Jewish people. Because God is telling Moses up on the mountain how he wants these people to operate their community. And you got to remember, it's a long time ago, these people, the Jewish people, the Hebrews, whatever you want to call them, have never really had the kind of society that God wants them to have that they're entering into. These people were mostly shepherds and wanderers. And, if you read way back in the first couple books of the Old Testament, they were wandering people, shepherds, that kind of thing. Just moved from place to wherever it was something for the sheep and the oxen to eat. Well, then they spent a long time in captivity in Egypt. And there they were basically working slaves. They did some of everything. Well, now God has brought them out of Egypt with Moses as their leader. And God has given Moses not just the Ten Commandments, but very detailed rules on how to conduct their society. And in this passage right here from Leviticus, the Lord is telling Moses, when you enter the land I'm giving you, the land has to have a Sabbath rest to celebrate the Lord. So it says you will plant your fields for 6 years and prune your vineyards, gather their crops for 6 years. In the 7th year, the land will have a Sabbath. And what that means, you cannot plant, you cannot till, you cannot prune your vineyards, you cannot harvest anything for profit from the land in that 7th year. However, anything the land should produce that you can eat, you're welcome to eat it. As well as, and it says in here, whatever the land produces during the Sabbath will be your food for you, for your male and female servants, for your hired laborers and foreign guests who live with you, and for your livestock and the wild animals in the land. All the land's produce can be eaten. But this is just whatever happened to grow without anything being tended. And you could not take it and use it for profit. And then it goes on even further to every seventh year, the land gets a Sabbath rest. And pretty hard thing to do, and I don't know how long the Israelites actually did this. I don't think they did it very long. Because they saw that if you had a Sabbath rest every seventh year on the land, then you were cutting your income down by 1/7. And people like income, they like making money owning property. And God even goes so far in further on in this passage to talk about the Jubilee year, which is every 49 years, every seventh times seventh year is kind of complicated. They have what they call the Jubilee. And it's kind of complicated. At that time, all debts are forgiven. If you bought property from somebody, you had to give it back to them. Everybody has to go back to where they started from, their home family. If they have moved somewhere else, they have to come back and start again. It's kind of weird. The idea of it, I believe, is to make sure that everybody gets justice, that the poor, the unfortunate get looked after as well, because we know that throughout the history of mankind, some people get wealthy, some people get poor. And as time goes on, year after year, those who are doing well get better off. Those who are struggling or in debt or have had misfortune or poor judgment, they get worse off. And what God's doing here is trying to stop everything, reset, and rebalance the scales. It's like a reboot. When you reboot your computer and start over, it's kind of like a reboot of society. And I don't think that lasted very long with the Israelites. It wouldn't last 1 year with us.
They say there never was a Jubilee year.
Yeah.
Never practiced.
It's talk about it some in the Bible, and Jesus said that I come to announce the Jubilee year. And he was saying, we're gonna have some justice now. And it's a wonderful concept, and it shows that God never stopped caring about all of his creation. He wanted the land that the people lived on to rest. He wanted people's struggles to have a rest. And apparently, according to the writers in the book, according to what Carolyn knows, the Israelites did not ever even try to go along with this. We wouldn't do it today. I think about if we every seventh year didn't plant no crops and just let the land rest, most farmers would end up going broke. I was thinking we would anyway, because we're trying to get 2 or 3 crops out of the land in a calendar year, where they were talking about actually just letting it sit there. So I don't know how well that would work if we tried to do that. I know if we tried to give back property to people, then that wouldn't go well at all. If I bought it from you, then I got to give it back to you, but I don't get no money for it. I wouldn't appreciate that. But what God was trying to do was keep things even and keep one bunch of people from getting too powerful and too concerned about getting more powerful and running the less fortunate down into the ground.
But also 49 years is like 2.5 generations. So it'd be an entirely different group of people.
I don't know. I don't know how long the people live back then.
Well, even so, I mean, if you have children when you're in your 20s and you do that twice, it'll be the grandchildren of the folks from the last Jubilee.
I think it might be at least 2 generations, and it might have been 3. I don't know. What do we consider a generation now? 30 years?
Well, now, but people got married a lot earlier back
True,
then.
true. So it could have been 3. So, yeah, you're right. It would be a different group of people, though they would still be related. But I hate to have to be the one to the administrator for all that to say, this goes here now, whatever.
So it never happened.
That's why it never happened. Probably. So, it brings us up the question of what's this all about. But again, God made these really strict rules, I think, because these people didn't know anything about having an independent society where you would sit there in one place and you make a living from that. But I do understand God's idea that everything needs a Sabbath. Everybody needs a Sabbath. And, as when He created everything, He took the seventh day and rested from it and said, this day is holy because I'm resting. Then He wants us to do the same thing. Nowadays, when we work a job, we think we got to be there 24/7. Never stop working, never stop being in communication with co-workers and whatnot, and it gets very tiresome after a while. When I retired from the hospital, I did not realize just how sick of it I was until I didn't have to go no more. That was the happiest, till I found out I had cancer. That was the happiest 6 months I ever had. Because I could think about something besides what needed to be done at work. And they asked me to come back for a little while, so I work whenever I'm able to. A day or two a week, or really an afternoon or two a week, do some paperwork. But it ain't stressful like it was before, because I know I can turn around and walk away whenever I get ready. And somebody's offered me a tractor driving job, so I'm ready to walk away and do that, because I ride a tractor all day. But to get back to the point of the lesson, when God created everything, then He created man. And it says in Genesis that our job is to look after His creation. Leviticus is rules for looking after His creation, because His creation is not just the land and the water and the air, it's the other people as well, the animals. So we're not to be abusive to any of our creation. And, it's a big political thing now about and has been for many years, about saving the earth, and we're destroying the earth, and we've done some damage to it. I personally don't believe that mankind has enough power to destroy the earth. But we have abused our environment excuse me, to make a profit. We don't like to let our environment rest. Greg can tell us nobody likes to see a piece of plot of land sitting there not being used for nothing. They want it being used, being sold to somebody, and profit coming out of it. And that's, it's the same way with farmers. We want to see profit coming out of the land. And we have learned the hard way in agriculture. I can't talk about real estate because I don't know about it really. But in agriculture, we've learned the hard way through the Dust Bowl years in the Midwest that you can't just take from the land. You've got to put back. And so we've learned that you can keep the land healthy, but you got to pour a lot of money out there in it to keep it healthy. And but we still don't believe in letting it have a Sabbath. I don't know how God feels about that. I wish I did know, know better what to do, but the thought of having to pay $50 an acre to rent some land from somebody and then don't do nothing with it in a year, it hurts your feelings mighty bad. our economy has gotten so complicated that, you know, we can't blame the Israelites for not having the Sabbath years and the Jubilee years because we couldn't do it. There's no way anybody would have allowed it to happen. Again, I don't know how God feels about that. So I don't have an answer really from this lesson. But what this lesson is about is taking care of our responsibility to be kind to creation. You know, God gave us all this. And just the fact that we can eat and have all we need from creation, it should make us grateful. It should make us praise God for giving us the favor that He gave us. And it should make us think some about our responsibility to look after what He gave us. And I see some things that are done better than they were 100 years ago in the world. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. The human race is not treating creation, and I mean the land, the earth, the other people, the animals. We're not treating it as well as I think God would like us to. So I guess I'm partially answering my question is I think maybe God's not 100% pleased with our management so far. And that gives us, something to think about and maybe something to worry about. We're all satisfied because we come to church that we are all right and God's pleased with us. Maybe God's not 100% pleased with everything we've done as a people. And going back to the purpose statement that I could never understand, part of it I understand is the last phrase, which is to ponder our role as cohabitants. So we need to keep in mind that God gave us this, and He's not making another one as far as we know of. When we tear this one up, we can take a rocket ship and go to another world and start over again. That's not going to happen that I know of. So we need to remember that everything we get from creation is a blessing. And as a blessing, it needs to be appreciated. It needs to be cared for. I know when we was little, Mom and Dad would have a fit. If we got something for Christmas, a toy, and we broke it, or abused it, tore it up, which sometimes it happens, the youngest get carried away, they would get so mad. You got this thing. Santa Claus brought you this. We gave you, and you didn't even appreciate it enough to look after it. You done tore it all to pieces. And I remember, feeling kind of ashamed at that for a few minutes anyway. And it's kind of like creation is the same thing. Santa Claus didn't give it to us, but God gave it to us. And do we appreciate it enough to care for it? I think that's the idea we need to remember is do we appreciate it enough to care for it? And if we don't care for it, as God took this promised land away from the Hebrews, He could take it away from us just as well. So, we're not the owners of it. We're real serious about deeds and property rights and what we own, what can't nobody else use, but we can use. We're all real serious about that. But we got to start remembering that none of it really is ours. Because you ain't going to take it with you when you die. And God intended it to be for the rest of the people that come after us. And, He was trying to get the Israelites to understand that you got to think about down the road and keep everybody healthy and looked after. And we need to think about the same thing. That's what I take from this lesson is I don't know how to get around the fact that we don't do a Jubilee with the earth any better than Israelites did, but we do need to remember that it ain't really ours, it's His. And our responsibility is to care for it.
Tim,
Yes, ma'am.
we don't use the land at home. We haven't grown crops in years on it. And my neighbor through the woods there has cows. Well, all she had to feed them was kudzu. And we felt sorry for the cows and goats. So I told her she could move them over on our land. And it's beneficial to our land because they're fertilizing our land. And they're grazing the grass so that Johnny don't have to mow. So I feel like we are contributing. We're taking care of the land by helping her.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We won't use it for anything else.
And Tim, if you think about the thing about economy, you talked about it in terms of production and consuming. Well, if the land is the production company and we're the consumers, how are we as caregivers making sure that's balanced and not that we're consuming more than it's producing?
That's a good way to look at it.
There's a great many things in Leviticus in particular that, we don't consider important anymore. For example, dietary restrictions. Okay, I mean, I don't think anybody here is gonna be problem with eating ham.
No, love it.
So, we have to kind of consider what that means in a modern context. It's, and when I think about your farming example, I think in terms of the way we modern farm with, with chemicals, basically. And if we didn't have those chemicals, I think back to when I was a kid, talk about letting a field be fallow for a season or 2 seasons or rotating crops, planting clover to try to get nitrogen back in the soil. Some of those things may have had very good reasons back when Leviticus was written, very practical economic reasons.
They did. And they did with modern agriculture until things changed. People began to leave the farm. Farm income per capita dropped. And so those things like planting the clover, letting the land rest, it helped the land. They were unprofitable because you didn't get any money back out of it. You may get money 3 years from
In
now,
the short term,
but you didn't get in, and we live in the short term. That's the way our economy works. And so, and I have to give due to all the land grant universities who did all the research, and the chemical companies and fertilizer companies as well did their own research. But, they've saved us in agriculture and kept this country able to feed itself, which to me that's a big thing in world politics. Is if you can be self-sufficient, you're safer.
Well, now farmers rotate crops.
We do rotate crops, and didn't used to do that. And they planted cotton, and then tobacco, and then they found out it wasn't working. And
You plant something to add nitrogen back in the soil this year, so the next year you can plant something else.
And
we also would lay it out a year or two and let it grow in weeds, rested. And we had fields that my daddy wanted to be sure it was rested year after next. He noted he could plant some things in there that would improve it.
I guess what I'm thinking is that at that time, with the technology of that time, some of these things may have been very practical.
They were absolutely letting the land rest a year or two. Tobacco is a monocrop. It's very disease prone, and those diseases live in the soil. And the more you put the food there for them, the more they proliferate. So if you let that land lay out a year or two, then the population of those disease microorganisms goes way down. And so then, I always heard when I first started farming from older people, the rest of the land makes a better tobacco crop, and it does. And there was a time when people would plant fescue and let it grow, just set in fescue for 2 or 3 years, and then come back with tobacco. And it made better tobacco, less use of chemicals to fight diseases. But then the downside of that was for 3 years that land didn't make no profit, no income. And so that's kind of gone by the wayside now. Like I say, our economy is based on the short term. I don't think that's really wise, but that's the way it works. And I think the Israelites got into that same problem. I think they realized after a while, as the population grew, that the short term is what you got to deal with. You know, profit down the road is no good if you done gone out of business before you get there. But if we could think and live more in the long term, I think we would have to maybe accept less income now, but I think we'd be better off later. And I think that goes with the idea of looking after God's creation.
As long as we don't abuse it.
Yeah, I mean, we get in a cycle we can't hardly get out of, and I think the Hebrews did too. God gave them some really strict rules to go by that look to me and look to all of us today like it's impossible. Like the Jubilee thing, it ain't how could you ever, who would you appoint to, I wouldn't want Joe Biden to be the one looking after that.
Don't be gone.
but you know, you got to think about that. You know, that's the world we live in.
Well, you know, another thing that strikes me, Tim, is in this country, we have all these rules about pollution and what you can do with the land and so forth. But we are basically exporting our pollution problems because we'll go and electric cars, for example, you have to dig up about 500,000 pounds of earth to produce a battery for an electric car. And none of that's happening in the United States. You know, it's happening in something or other, Stan or Africa or someplace else. And we don't care what happens in some other country.
Right.
As long as we get what we
As long as we get the battery. Now, I've always thought, you know, electric cars, cute idea, but if people say they're doing it to help the environment, they're absolutely wrong. It takes a lot more inputs and more fossil fuels to make that electric car and keep it running than it does a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle. It's just, you can look up the facts and the facts are there. It's cool, you know.
Of course, you charge it with commercial power, which is almost half produced with coal.
Exactly. So it's kind of like they tell us to recycle all our plastic and paper and stuff, and that's fine. But if you look into it, you'll find that it costs more and uses more resources to recycle this stuff than it does to just burn it up and make some new. And that's the truth of it. So, you know, we try, and I think with good intentions, we come up with a lot of these environmental regulations. But like Scott said, as long as we ain't got to look at it and it's across the ocean where they, you know, polluting everything and destroying the land and killing everybody with poison, we don't care as long as it ain't here and we can't see it.
As long as it ain't in my back door.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not sure God's 100% pleased with those ideas, but it's a complicated thing, and it's something that, when you think about it, you kind of get discouraged, like I don't see no way to make things better, but the idea that God wanted these people to have is to live in the long term, to make sure that everybody and everything is cared for and it's still there when another generation comes. I think that's what he was trying to teach. As living as God's people, you should want to take care of everything and everybody to the best of your ability. It's a hard thing to do because the Israelites found that they couldn't do it, and we probably can't do it either. But anyway, anybody got anything else they want to say? Because it's getting about 20 till now. All right, well, I'm going to shut it off. Thank y'all for coming. I'm glad to see all these chairs in here full. it don't make me feel so lonesome.
But we still have a few with,
Still have some
more.
available seats, but it's a whole lot better than it was in one but me and you and John.
5 or 6 of us,
Well, there was times it won't be like 2.
we double.
So let me shut this thing off and we'll see y'all next Sunday.